Thank you, Treaty Vice President. Now, Commissioner Tzitzikostas.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. As you know very well, Europe is a maritime continent. Long before motorways stitched together our landscapes and aircraft traced invisible highways across our skies, it was the sea that connected us to each other and to the rest of the world. And yet, when we think of transport of goods today, we tend to think first of what we see. Trucks on motorways, planes overhead, and perhaps the freight trains that pass through our stations without stopping. Unless you live near a port, ships are less visible, but they are indispensable. Ships carry 3/4 of all EU imports and exports. Even within the European Union, they account for 30% of freight transport. From energy supplies to raw materials and from cars to pharmaceuticals, ships and ports make global trade possible. The value of EU ports and of its imports transported by sea reaches 1.3 trillion euros annually. Our ports also support over 423,000 jobs all across our union. And let's not forget the almost 400 million passengers who pass through our ports each year, tourists, commuters, islanders, who rely on ferries to access work, healthcare, education, and essential services. So let me be clear. Europe has a proud history in shipping, and the EU-controlled fleet is still the largest in the world. Ships and ports keep our economies competitive and safeguard our quality of life. So today we present two strategies designed to strengthen that foundation. They are about boosting the competitiveness of our maritime industry and ports, increasing security resilience, and accelerating the transition to more sustainability. Ports are strategic assets for trade, energy, industry, and military mobility. But as global competition intensifies and security risks multiply, so does their vulnerability. So with our new EU port strategy, we will future-proof these gateways to Europe for the long term. After all, a world-class fleet requires world-class gateways. We must also take a realistic view of the risks before us. Foreign ownership and control of ports can pose security risks, particularly where state-backed actors are involved. We will therefore develop criteria and guidance to Member States, focusing on ports identified as strategic dual-use infrastructure. To combat drug trafficking and organised crime, we will build on the work of the European Ports Alliance. We will establish a framework for port assessment in non-EU countries and introduce rigorous background checks for port workers. And because modern threats are likely to be digital as physical, we will launch an EU-wide security risk assessment to identify and mitigate cybersecurity vulnerabilities. On energy, we know that ports are engines of re-industrialization, so we will speed up permit granting procedures for strategic energy and environmental projects. In our upcoming Electrification Action Plan, we will address grid access and capacity, ensuring that ports can indeed deploy the clean energy required to power the fleets of the future. Now, creating ports fit for the future will require serious investment, public and private. Drawing on the Connecting Europe facility, cohesion policy funds and InvestEU, we will support our strategic assets with particular attention to the specific needs of small and medium-sized ports and those serving our islands and our outermost regions. I also encourage ports to think beyond traditional models, to diversify into clean energy, digital services and blue tech innovation. Through EU funding, advisory support and public-private partnerships, we can de-risk innovative projects. Ladies and gentlemen, ports are one half of the maritime equation. Ships themselves are the other. With the EU Industrial Maritime Strategy, the second strategy we are presenting today, we want our shipping sector to thrive and our shipbuilding sector to revive. Our maritime sector, as you know, faces intense global competition and growing geopolitical tensions, with ships operating in an increasingly complex environment of disruptions, energy transition costs and aging workforce, but also intensified by dependencies on third country ship production and financing. Also, the hostilities in the Middle East just this week remind us yet again of the strategic importance of shipping and the need to maintain the resilience of the sector. At the same time, we must confront aggressive state-backed subsidies distorting global shipbuilding. On the other hand, we must not forget that we have more than 300 shipyards and 28,000 equipment manufacturers who provide us with thousands of jobs, and that 97% of cruise ships and 67% of icebreakers that are so important for our Arctic security are built in the European Union. And this leadership is worth protecting. Our industrial maritime strategy, therefore, focuses on actions for maritime manufacturing and for shipping. Our cross-cutting actions address innovation, finance and skills. Asserting European sovereignty means strengthening manufacturing. This includes supporting the digital transformation of our shipyards and creating an industrial maritime value chain alliance. To ensure competitive EU shipping, we will simplify our legislation and work on further reducing administrative requirements. We will use existing state aid guidelines which frame how member states can support shipping. We will also encourage vessels to choose EU flags, which are recognized globally for high safety and quality standards. On decarbonisation, we are committed to fostering conditions that allow the renewal of our fleets, and we will continue to support our shipping sector as it invests in decarbonisation. Through the Global Gateway Green Shipping Corridor and hubs, we will strengthen international collaboration, facilitate the use of clean and alternative fuels, safeguard investment, and of course protect EU interests in international supply chains. We will also pursue our work within the International Maritime Organization, the IMO, and build bridges with international partners towards global solutions to decarbonise shipping, and we will revise the relevant EU legislation in order to avoid double payment and create a real level playing field globally. We will also reinforce EU influence on global maritime safety standards to ensure a true level playing field in this sector as well. Now, innovation will shape the next chapter of maritime transport, and we will support the EU leadership in digital and green technologies with very clear guidance, intensified research and innovation support, and safeguards against technology leakage. Of course, here again, investments remain key. Through the Connecting Europe facility, we will support fleet renewal and decarbonisation. There will also be a dedicated maritime call under the Innovation Fund in 2027, next year. Additional investments in offshore energy and blue tech will ensure that maritime innovation continues at scale. We also call on the Member States to reinvest part of their emissions trading system revenues in decarbonising the waterborne transport through clean fuels, ports, infrastructure and renewal of ageing passenger fleets. To operate these innovations, we need talent. So we will also identify the skill gaps, and we will work closely together with our social partners to expand training and upskilling. Crucially, this transition must go hand in hand with quality jobs, fair working conditions and strong safety standards. As we are looking beyond borders, we need to be ready in all these sectors. The Commission remains committed to defending EU interests internationally while building partnerships wherever appropriate. Comprehensive maritime transport commitments in trade agreements pursue reciprocal market access and enable EU operators to navigate global routes. So let me conclude, ladies and gentlemen, on a note of realism. Beyond competitiveness and the energy transition, ports and the maritime industry help keep Europe safe. Ports are critical for military mobility. This places them high on the list of infrastructure upgrades that are urgently needed, which we will support through the Connecting Europe facility. Alongside civilian ships, our ports must be capable of accompanying and accommodating military vessels. On the industrial side, we will support naval production capacity, such as the icebreakers. In addition, we are proposing a dual-use ferry construction support mechanism, enabling commercial ferries to be upgraded so they can also transport heavy equipment in times of crisis. Ladies and gentlemen, these strategies, as you understand, are about more than policy. They are about preparedness. They are about sovereignty and long-term prosperity. They reflect Europe's unity of purpose in securing a resilient, innovative and competitive future. They provide a clear framework and very concrete actions. Now, Member States and stakeholders must deliver, because Europe's strategic autonomy cannot and will not be built in Brussels alone. It will be built in our shipyards, our ports, our shipping industries, our terminals and our maritime communities. If we all act with dedication and determination, if we build on collaboration, we will transform our maritime sector and ports into the global leaders of tomorrow. And above all, they will help keep Europe and Europeans safe and secure.